Shades of Shakti, presented by the Drs. Kiran and Pallavi Patel Foundation for Global Understanding.
Hello, I'm NISHA MATHUR and welcome to Shades of Shakti, a celebration of South Asian women. Yes, we celebrate the lives of inspirational South Asian women who have blazed trails, pushed past challenges, and shattered ceilings of glass. These women have widened the scope of dreams and proved to be role models. What would it take for you to realize how powerful you can be? Well, for Anita Moorjani, it took almost dying from end-stage cancer. Anita was rushed to the hospital on the morning of February 2nd, 2006, and doctors had given her just hours to live. Anita, tell us about the morning of February 2nd, 2006 and your condition when you got to the hospital.
On that morning, I was in a coma after having cancer for about 4 years. So at that point, I was connected to oxygen. I couldn't breathe without the aid of the oxygen tank. I had these huge open skin lesions in my skin, in my body, all over my body, that were weeping. And my lungs were filled with fluid. So every time I lied down, I would choke on my own fluid. And my body was not absorbing any nutrition. So I weighed about 85 pounds. I was like a skeleton. And I couldn't walk because my muscles had completely deteriorated. And although I had been going in and out of hospital for treatments, I was being cared for at home. And on that morning, I went into a coma.
And you were rushed to the hospital that morning by your husband?
I was rushed to the hospital by my husband. My husband had called the doctor and told him, my husband was absolutely frantic, and he told the doctor that I wasn't waking up. And the doctor immediately knew that these were the final stages and told my husband to rush me to the hospital.
And were you aware of what was going on, what the doctors were saying, what your husband was saying? Were you aware of everything?
Yeah, interestingly, I was actually aware of what everyone was saying, and not just everyone around me, but even beyond. Like, I was aware of what the doctors were saying outside of the hospital room and down the corridor. I was aware that they were telling my husband that these were my final hours, and that I wasn't even going to make it through the night, and that my organs had shut down now.
Anita experienced a semi-separation of consciousness from her body. Now, when you actually went into the coma, did you see other beings around you?
I did. In fact, I was aware that I was dying, and I saw it felt as though there were other beings that were there helping me and guiding me. And I didn't recognize most of the beings, but I could tell that they were very loving and that they were there to guide me. And then there was one that I recognized, and that was my father, who had passed away 10 years before this experience.
And what was he saying to you?
My father actually wanted me to know that it wasn't my time. And interestingly, in that realm, because we don't have physical bodies, the communication is not done through language, it's not done verbally. It's like telepathic. It was like everything he wanted me to know, I knew. Because here in our physical bodies, we communicate using language and using our vocal cords and our mouths. But when we don't have our physical bodies and we're just pure consciousness, we don't communicate in the same way. It's kind of like my essence and his essence. It was kind of like we just merged, and I knew everything he wanted me to know. And the feeling was incredible. It felt like all I felt from him was unconditional love, which for me was very impactful, because I had never felt that much love from him when I was growing up, when in life, when he was my father here in physical life.
Unable to move as a result of the cancer that had ravaged her body for almost 4 years, Anita entered another dimension where she experienced great clarity and understanding of the purpose she had on Earth. Find out what happens next.
It felt like total love. Next thing I knew, I was looking down the room where my body was. I could see everyone working on me. I could hear what they were saying. There were 2 nurses outside of the room looking in. One said to the other, "Why are they working so hard? He's gone. If they do bring him back, he'd be a vegetable." I later on told her what she said. She about passed out.
Doctors gave Anita only hours to live. As her body lay dying, she entered another dimension. In this outwardly place, she experienced profound peace and joy. Now, you were drifting in and out, but you actually crossed over. What was the strongest feeling you felt when you actually crossed over? Was it love?
Yes, it felt as though I was like surrounded or enveloped in a feeling of unconditional love. And even the words unconditional love is just not powerful enough to describe it, because I feel that in our English language, or in any language, I think, there is probably no words that can describe that feeling of the other realm. It felt as if I was loved and accepted, and I didn't have to do anything to deserve it or be worthy. I was just loved and accepted just because I existed. And it was just the most incredible feeling I could ever imagine ever having felt.
Anita entered another dimension where she experienced great clarity and understanding of her life and purpose here on Earth. And you also gained a clarity as to why you got the cancer in the first place. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, in that state, everything was just so clear. I understood why I was there. I understood, in fact, how every thought, every decision in my life led me to be dying, lying there in that hospital bed in that moment. And it was so incredibly clear. I understood why I had the cancer, and I understood that actually that I am, in fact, we all are amazing, magnificent beings. We are incredibly powerful beyond what we believe we are. We are incredibly powerful. But I had never realized it, and I had always suppressed who I am. I realized that I had never loved myself. I had always forsaken myself, put myself last, treated myself like a doormat. I'd always been a people pleaser, and I'd always made myself small. And I realized that a lifetime of suppressing myself, beating myself up, had caused me, it had caused cancer. Basically, it had caused me to turn in against myself, which manifested as cancer.
And you also learned what role your family played in your life. And I believe you saw different scenes. Tell us a little bit about those scenes and the connectivity you had with your family.
I saw what I perceived as other lifetimes that I had with different family members. For example, I realized that my husband and I, our purpose is connected. And I became aware that if I died, he would not be able to fulfill his purpose. And I was aware that my brother and I had had lifetimes together. And I was aware that in that moment that my brother was flying from India to come and see me. And so I was aware that I needed to stay alive at least until he got here. This was happening to me in Hong Kong. And I could feel, it was like I could see him on the plane, distraught because he knew that I was dying. And I felt I needed to stay alive at least until he got to me.
And you were seeing all these scenes at the same time?
That's right. It was like wherever I put my awareness, that's what I could see. And even if it was something from a potential future, the future, like if I chose to come back, I could see the future if I chose to come back. I could see the future if I chose not to come back. I could see what we perceive as, say, past lives, my past life with my brother or with my husband, the connection that caused me to be with them in this life. But it was not like in linear time. It was like all of it was happening simultaneously. But wherever I put my awareness, that's what I could see.
So there's a lot more to this three-dimensional world than we realize. So what was your perception like?
It lent an air of clarity in that realm. The clarity was incredible. It was like everything made sense because I could see how every choice and every decision we make in this moment leads to the next moment. So it was like how I could see if I made the choice, I felt like I had the choice of whether to die or whether to come back into my body. So it was like I could see that if I made this choice, this is what will happen. And if I made this choice, this is what will happen.
So you could see the results of your choice?
Yes, I could see the results both ways, whether I died or whether I lived.
And how did you know it was time to make that choice? Was there some kind of boundary there? Or I believe you even saw your father when it was time to make a decision. How did you know that it was time to make that choice?
I couldn't see any reason to come back here into a sick and dying body. But then, in the next moment, it was like I realized that now that I know the truth, now that I know the truth of who I am and why I got the cancer and how powerful I really am, I realized that if I chose to come back, my body would heal very, very quickly. And at that point, I felt as though my father was saying, you can't go any further than this. He was encouraging me to go back, but he was saying that if you go any further than this point, you can't turn back. And so that was the point where I felt I had the decision. But I also felt my father was saying, now that you know the truth of who you really are, go back and live your life fearlessly. And that's when I started to come out of the coma.
Anita was given a choice of whether to return to life or not. What happens next will astound you.
And I felt this overwhelming sense of love and acceptance that I have never ever felt on this earth, that it is absolutely not possible to feel on this earth. This level of love, it's just filled everything. And there was this warmth. It was not a temperature, just this warmth that just enveloped me in the kind of love you've always been longing for your whole life.
Anita's husband was told by doctors that she had less than 36 hours to live. Her organs were shutting down. All the while, Anita was having a near-death experience and was given the choice whether to return to her body or not.
So that positive energy that you had, tell us how that could apply to different areas of life, not just illness.
I think in every area of life, if people knew how amazing and powerful they are, if they knew that they had all the power of the universe accessible to them, it would really help them. You know, one of the problems is that I believe that we are born knowing this. You look at little kids, they know it, they're confident, and they know they can do anything, and they're fearless. But I think that we get conditioned into fearing everything. We're brought up in a culture, a society, and I'm not talking about our ethnic culture, but I think everybody is brought up, the planet, the culture of our world, is that where we teach people using fear. We control people using fear, and that's what makes them stay small. And I feared everything. I feared displeasing people, I feared failing, I feared criticism, I feared everything. And then I feared cancer, and what happened? I got cancer. I was obsessively fearful of cancer. So every decision I made, it came from a place of fear of the consequences. I'm doing this because I'm afraid of the consequences if I don't.
If Anita decided to return back to life, how could she be sure that she would be healed?
And your test results for your organ functions were already taken.
Yes.
But you had the power of the results. You had the power to live.
Yes, because from that realm, I could see that all of time exists at once. So the test could have been taken at this moment, but you don't necessarily have to jump into that moment. You could jump into that one instead, depending. And what I've learned is that the moment that you jump into is totally dependent on how much you love and value yourself. And for you to achieve the highest potential moment, it's dependent on how much you love and value yourself.
Anita makes the choice to live, but what happens next is simply remarkable. Surrounded by loved ones and a medical team anticipating her last breath at any moment, Anita lay in a deep coma. Yet she was given the opportunity to return to her cancer-ravaged body, defying all odds, and then experiencing the incredible.
Well, you're alive, so we know you made the choice to come back. But tell us what happened when you woke up, especially with your organ function results.
Well, right after I woke up, of course my family were really shocked and they were really happy. And my brother kept saying it's because he came to see me and I stayed alive for him. And of course my husband said, no, it's because of him. And so my family were really amazing. But what actually happened is my organs, sure enough, started functioning. The doctor walked into the room and said, we have good news, your organs are functioning. And because I had seen it in the other realm, I was confused in that moment when the doctor came in. I said, oh, didn't you come in already and say that? And he said, no. And so they were kind of wondering what was going on. And then later I realized what had happened. And within 4 days, my tumors shrunk by 70%. And within 5 weeks, I was released from the hospital cancer-free.
With your biopsy results, everything came out completely clear.
Everything came out completely clear, and the doctors could not believe it. They kept taking tests, and they kept saying that cancer doesn't disappear like this. We just have to find it. So they kept on taking these painful tests, biopsies, and so on. And I kept fighting against them, saying, this is painful. I don't want to do these tests. I know I'm well. And it wasn't like I felt that I was going to be well. It was like I knew I was already well and that my body just had to catch up.
Anita had a near-death experience. 30 hours later, she awoke from her coma, and 4 days later, her body was healed.
What inspired you to write your book, Dying to Be Me?
I didn't actually set out to write a book. I started to write on the internet. I started to write on a particular website that was about near-death experiences. It happened to be run by an oncologist, so he was particularly interested in my case. And as I wrote on that website, I had no idea, but it started to go viral. People started to share the link to what I had written, which was my story, my experience. They started to share the link, and it started to go viral on the internet. And Wayne Dyer discovered it. And so he was the one that told his publishers to find me and track me down and to ask me to write the book.
And now you're a New York Times best-selling author. That must be a great, great feeling.
It feels incredible. It makes me feel like there was a purpose for me to come back. I feel very blessed that my father did encourage me to come back.
What do you have to say to the skeptics who say what you had were mere hallucinations of the brain? But I think you do have a lot of evidence to support your story. So what would you like to say to the skeptics?
I would say that it's fine. I don't set out to try to convince people who don't believe me, but I know what happened to me, and I have the medical evidence for the physical healing, the healing of the cancer, which even the oncologists cannot explain. And I feel that no matter how skeptical you are, and even if you feel it was the medicines that caused me to hallucinate, it's still worth investigating those emotions that I felt. If it triggered a healing, then it's still worth investigating it for other cancer patients, because I strongly believe that there is a huge link between our emotions and serious illnesses like cancer and heart disease. And until they seriously start researching those links, I don't think they will find a cure for cancer.
On a final note, for all our Shades of Shakti viewers who maybe want to get a fresh start on life, who want to learn from your experience, tell us some of the lessons that you learned through your experience.
The number one lesson I learned is that the most important thing you can do is love yourself. You have to love yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. And when I say love yourself, it doesn't mean just like, you know, taking time out for yourself or taking care of yourself. It's a lot more than that. It's like really being there for yourself, even if no one else is. It means that even if you fail, even if you lose everything, even if you do a project or a business that fails and other people are criticizing you, you still have to be able to look in the mirror and tell yourself, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, I am going to stand by me. I'm going to get up in the morning, dust myself down, and keep going. And that's something we're never taught or encouraged to do. It's to be our own best friend and to never give up on ourselves. That is the most important thing I learned, is always be there for yourself. That's number one. The number two thing I learned is that we have to make our choices from love, not from fear. If you choose to eat healthy food, for example, do it because you love and value yourself and you want to live long and you value your life, not because you fear getting illness. I used to be obsessively healthy, but I did it because I feared cancer. And so I would research everything on how to prevent cancer, and everything I ate was to prevent cancer, not to promote health.
Anita, you have been so inspiring. Your story is so incredible, and I would encourage our viewers to read Anita's book, Dying to Be Me. It's available on Amazon, and it goes into far more details than we were able to discuss today about the whole experience and your colorful journey and how it's changed your life and how you can inspire others to change their lives as well for the better. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks.
Anita had a remarkable and complete recovery of her health. Anita's riveting story inspires us all to transform our lives by living more authentically, discovering our greatest passions, transcending our deepest fears, and living from a place of pure joy. Our women of Shakti are showing everyone just how strong we become and how strong we can get. Please keep those emails coming in at shadesofshakti@tvasiausa.com and visit our Facebook page for the latest updates on our show. I'm NISHA, reminding you to find that inner passion and live life to the fullest.